And good morning, Utsada. Welcome to Hindu Lounge. Utsada, welcome to Hindu Lounge episode number 62. I hope you can hear me.
Ajay bhai,
Back
yes, I can
online.
to see you again. I mean, I see you every day,
Yes,
but
Utsada. What is that?
every day.
Utsada,
So glad to see you
every,
again.
I know it's one of those days again. Utsada. Okay, Utsada, let's get right into it. So, good morning, Utsada. This is Hindu Lounge. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact. Hindu Pact is the policy research and advocacy initiative of World Hindu Council of America. Hindu Lounge comes live every Sunday at 11 o'clock or so. We are usually within a 5 or 10 minute range of 11 o'clock. We appreciate all of you joining us. Hindu Lounge is a show that we do on contemporary American Hindu issues. So we talk about issues from American Hindu perspective. And I am Ajay Shah. I am the president of World Hindu Council of America, and with me, as always, is our executive director of Hindu Pact, Utsada is Utsav Chakrabarti, and Utsada is now a recognized Hindu intellectual, right, Utsada? So
Ajay,
welcome to Hindu Lounge.
Ajay bhai, each time you say that, it makes me sound like I am a leftist woke JNU professor. I'm not an intellectual. I would rather not call
Eh,
myself.
what's wrong with woke JNU person? Come on. This is the flavor of the month. I mean, if you were to go to Baskin Robbins and you have this, flavor of the month ice cream, this is the intellectual flavor of the month is to be called a JNU type woke person, and you are it.
It's been the flavor of the decade, I must say. But yeah, I'm not into flavors that come and go. I'm
Well, the flavors are for the rest of the people, not for you.
correct.
I
That's
mean,
true.
So now with that, I think we have an interesting show today. We are going to talk about several issues, and this time you are driving the PowerPoint, so you probably can tell the topics better than I do. But we are definitely for the we are going to talk about the issue related to the the riots that took place in Africa, and we are also going to talk about the death of, or the killing rather, of Danish Siddiqui, who was a Reuters photographer who was killed by Taliban in Afghanistan. So, and then we have a potpourri of other topics that we are going to cover today. So, with that, Utsada, let's dwell right into it and talk about the killing of Hindus that are Indians, but majority of them Hindus in South Africa. Now, Utsada, this is not the first time, excuse me, this is not the first time that Indians or Hindus in South Africa have been under some kind of attack, right?
That's
This
correct. Can you see
is
my screen,
this
Ajay bhai?
reminds us of Uganda, where all the Indians were driven out in the 70s and rather 60s, right? I'm trying to remember. I should know, having having close ties to Uganda at one time. But I this is the this in other parts of Africa also. At some time or the other, Indians have been targeted. So the what why do you think? And I have my own views, but I'll start with you. Opportunity to welcome everyone, and then tell us, why do you think we are looking at this? This kind of attack on Hindus. I mean, they are a successful minority, and the reason also for bringing this topic up is because, is there a lesson for Hindus who are living outside of India um, in this? So let's first start about what actually happened in South Africa. Let's start with that. Over to you.
Yeah, so Ajay, what happened is that in the last couple of weeks, actually last 1 week, I must say, South Africa has been witnessing widespread riots. After President Jacob Zuma, who's been currently deposed, he was jailed and for contempt of court. So he comes from an ethnicity which is the Zulu ethnicity, and because his supporters were angry, they primarily started targeting Indians who own businesses, who are in government jobs. Quite a significant number of Indians live in the Durban area. It's an urban center in South Africa, and so they targeted Indians. They are easy targets. Not a very aggressive community tries to fit into the local fabric, and shops were burned, and families had to leave their houses were burned. Some people even died trying to protect their homes and businesses. About $2 million losses were suffered in just a couple of days of rioting. So this brings up the memories, especially for those of the Indian community living in Africa, Indian African community, the memories of Uganda. Because Ajab, I will let you speak about it, about what happened in Uganda, and this is a perennial theme. Hindus in South Africa and Indians in South Africa have been immigrants to that part of the world for many centuries. I mean, if you just go back to the British and the European colonial era, there are historical ties that go back thousands of years, actually. But that's for another conversation, another day. We should actually probably do a program on pre pre pre-Islamic immigration and interaction of Indians, Hindus, I must say mostly, with the African communities, especially in Ethiopia. That's a separate show. There's a lot to discuss on that, and the role of the Romans. Very, very interesting topic. But in the last couple of hundred years, many Hindus during the British times moved to the African continent, and they were very successful because they're as a hardworking community, peaceful community. They built businesses, and they have contributed significantly to Africa. And approximately 1.5 million Indians of African continent live in South Africa. Most of them are Hindus. Close to 50% of them are Hindus, even though Hindus are being specifically targeted for conversion in the last 20 years. I mean, there used to be almost 80% of the population 30 years ago, 40 years ago amongst the Indians. Now they're almost 50%. So another conversation. But every time we do a show, we have to do notes of all the conversations that we have, that we say we will do later on. But you should talk about Uganda and what happened in Uganda, and then we can come back to what's happening in South
Yeah.
Africa.
So the I'm of course I was not one of the people who had to leave Uganda because of Idi Amin. Now Idi Amin was, as most people know, was the dictator in Uganda, and when he came to power, he specifically targeted the Indian community, most of them Hindus, for oppression. And he basically, eventually, it came to a point where he gave people 72 hours, I think it was 48 or 72 hours to leave Uganda. And that, you know, so that meant that people who lived in Uganda, and a lot of them were from the state of Gujarat, and they basically they had lived there in Uganda for several generations, and they had to leave Uganda with nothing but the clothes on their back, and that's it. So all they had for generations, 3, 4 generations, in many cases more, so that they had set up businesses, they had set up factories, they had set up houses, and the only place they knew in life was this country, Uganda, that where they had lived. And all of a sudden, they had to now leave this, they had to now leave this home of theirs, and a lot of them went to UK, some of them went to India, some went to other places, and so that left a scar in many ways in many people. Now, so that it is also true that when they were really successful in establishing themselves in Uganda, and sorry, in UK, and in a generation or two, they have become one of the probably the most successful minority in UK. So that is the history of the Indians and Hindus in Uganda. Now, when you look at the incidents and events that unfolded in South Africa last week, it certainly brings back the memories of all these people who had immigrated out of Africa, in out of Uganda, and they continue to immigrate out of Indians continue to immigrate out of Africa from various countries. Even people from Kenya have now recently, in last 10 or 20 years, have started moving to United Kingdom or US, or some of them to India and other places as well. So I think what it points to is the fact that when Indians and Hindus have become a successful minority in a particular country, uh, and they've really been have done nothing other than be successful, you playing by the rule book, they have still at some point, due to jealousy, due to economic envy, they have come under attack. And I think when I look at the news that is coming out of South Africa, I think that a lot of it probably has to do with the economic envy. Yes, sir.
Well, Ajay, so since you were talking about Uganda, you must know that Idi Amin, after he was deposed, he actually found asylum in Saudi Arabia and lived off the rest of his life near the city of Makkah in Saudi Arabia. And it's not just the economic angle, I believe, that impacts Indian and Hindu immigrants in the African continent. Sometimes it's a mixture of religious. In the case of Uganda, it was certainly a lot of religious fervor as well, because many of these dictators, especially in northern Africa, northern Central Africa, consider Hindus to be worthy of jealousy because of their fundamentalist beliefs themselves. In the case of South Africa, I think it is noteworthy that it is primarily driven economically, and this is not something new. South Africa has seen rioting and violence against Indian communities, especially Hindu communities, for many, many centuries. Actually, even during in the 19th century, and it was quite common to target Hindus, because
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
what was new is that to see this happen in today's time, when you would experience, you would hope that the experience of these communities have kind of intermingled, and their goals are intermingled, and South Africa as a country has moved on from its apartheid era. To see this happen now points to some really concerning historical stories, as we discuss Uganda. And I think Indian American community should learn from this, because what is happening in South Africa could happen anywhere else in the world as well. So it's important for the community to learn from what is happening and devise strategies to be solid, united, and proactive in mitigating these kinds of situations in the future.
Let me turn my I people know that we are experimenting with this new technology, so I'm trying to do it in a way where, how in very professional shows, now that we are one of them, we turn off the camera sometimes of the person who's not speaking, if there's especially no conversation going on. So I was just kind of playing around with that feature. I'll take a little bit of issue with you on the on the East Africa and Idi Amin. When Idi Amin got rid of Indians from Uganda, he did not keep any Indian, even though some of the Indians were Muslims. He got rid of all the Indians, regardless of whether they were Hindus or Muslims. He basically had a Indophobic view of the world, strictly out of the personal vendetta with the leading members of the Indian community in Uganda, and economic envy. But there was also some personal vendetta and all the other things that were involved in that. So I'll leave that for that for now. But there is one question, and this question, other people have also kind of alluded to. And Suman Bhatia ji has said that any corruption issue related to Gupta brothers. Now, you know that the former president Jacob Zuma had some dealings, business dealings with the Gupta family, and the Gupta family was, lived very lavish life in, and in South Africa, and they had a lot of political connections over there. So any, I, so the I cannot imagine that that the connection with Gupta brothers, which was, alleged to have been involved in corruption to some extent, with to a large extent, I don't even know, with former President Zuma, would lead to killing of over 200 Indians and destruction of all the properties owned by the Indians over there, to that extent that police were bystanders, and not only, and then the Hindus and the Indians over there had to actually arm themselves to defend themselves. I don't think that that can be traced to a single corrupt family and a corruption issue. Your
So,
thoughts?
yeah, I agree with you, Ajay bhai, because, okay, let's for a moment assume that the Gupta brothers are corrupt. Who were they doing the corruption with? They were doing the corruption with the local population, the local leaders. Why are they not being targeted? So, to target an entire community based on some economic malpractices that almost the entire political leadership of a country is involved in actually reeks of looking for excuses. So basically, assume for a moment that in America you would target all Irish people because some Irish American was corrupt. Imagine that happening. And that kind of that kind of attitude actually is the reason why we face this kind of violence, because we still are looking for an excuse on behalf of the committers of the crime. That should not be our approach at all. I think that's important for us.
And also, I'll tell you one. Not only, it's a you know it's the blaming this one interaction between former President Zuma and Gupta family not just is a poor excuse, but also if you were to read the statements that have come from the Zulu king and the current president, Ramaphosa of South Africa. They have said that it is almost, and I'm paraphrasing here, that it was almost as if the crowd and the perpetrators were driven by remote control. And so that to me, the definitive statements coming out of the leadership in South Africa was that there was, there was a targeted killing of Indians and Hindus, and it was to some extent maybe even organized killing, and that that does not that cannot be traced to a corruption charge against one family and the complacency, alleged complacency of the ex-president or former president Jacob Zuma with that family. This is a targeted killing of Indians, of Hindus, because they were economically successful. There's really no other way to explain this. There's really no other way to explain this.
And there is historical baggage. I mean, this is not new. That's the most important thing to understand. This is not new. This is not happening out of thin air. There is a historical narrative in place, and therefore this is just an expression and revival of that narrative in South Africa, which is the biggest concerning part, which means that South Africa has not moved on from what it was 100 years ago on many issues. And that should be a cause for concern, because that can lead to real violence in future as well.
Uh, what do you think are the implications? What are the lessons that Hindus in America need to learn? Because in America also, if you notice, so that Hindus are very successful minority. If you look at the corporate America, Hindus have made great strides, starting with not just tech companies, but tech companies, the finance companies, the areas of medicine, areas of academic, and all the other places. Indians have made, and Hindus have, especially Hindus have made great strides. Um, Add to that the political visibility that now Hindus have in America. The current vice president has a partial Indian origin or Hindu origin, um, and there are and if you look at the appointments that have been made by the Biden administration in recent times, a lot of uh, Hindu Americans and Indian Americans are in prominent position. Uh, and the two Republican governors were of Indian origin and followers of dharmic is one. They didn't follow dharmic tradition. One was Christian, and other is somewhat ambiguous. But still, they're people of Indian origin. So there, are there lessons that we can learn out of the African experience, African diaspora experience that may be applicable here? And so that you're on mute.
Absolutely, I agree with you, and this is very important for us to understand because we as a community in America often feel safe because we believe that the rule of law will always stay the same. In most civilized countries around the world, that's the belief, that's the assumption, and that's a good way to look at countries and their societies. But it is important to understand that everything is dynamic in this world, and it takes very little for societies to descend into chaos if prejudice is prevalent. So the South Africa example tells us that all it takes is a significant section of the population to have a bias and a prejudice based on real or assumed factors. And if that is the case, then it takes very little for a society to descend into violence. And that I'm pretty sure is going to affect us at some point in America as well. It's a matter of time because every society during its economic success doesn't show off the worst in itself. And we hope America continues to stay economic global superpower, uh, economic and otherwise. But every society goes through its ups and downs, and there could be a time when American society also goes through its trough, uh, in a long term basis, on a long term basis, not the usual cycles of economic up and down. And when that happens, I think the worst in societies will emerge, and that's when Indian Americans and Hindu Americans primarily, because all non-Hindu Americans can always align with their co-religionists at times of distress. Hindu Americans, as history has shown, will be isolated, and that's going to be the. It doesn't sound good to hear this, but we all need to learn from history, and this is one of the lessons we should be drawing.
Yeah. So the one thing I would say is that there is in World in the Council of America, we usually say that dharmo rakshati rakshitah. Those who protect dharma protects. If you protect dharma, dharma will protect you. And I think what that points to is that it is not just following the law, but you have to protect yourself and your culture and your existence and your living in multiple ways. And if that requires taking a public posture and that and aligning with the right uh, aligning with the right uh, you know uh, I would say communities in America, aligning with the right political parties in America, that would enable uh, you know our existence to some extent and not lead to persecution of Hindus is going to be important. So I think I not only I do agree with you, I just say that Hindus will have to do a lot more than just you know excel at academics, excel at corporate and in other places of life. They will have to do. They will have to work on self preservation as well. I will give you one example so that there's a lot of there's a lot of move right now to consider things other than a merit for admission in college. Now, this is another form of another form of bringing another form of manifestation, another form of manifestation of economic envy, in this case against Asian Americans, which include Indian Americans, so, and Hindu Americans. So basically, because Hindus have been successful in getting to some of the most prestigious universities in America, they are being targeted in multiple ways. And I have several examples from last week where where the Hindus where basically the city councils or the parent teacher associations have come up and said we should consider criteria other than merit for admission to the most selective schools or the most selective colleges. And we talked about in past how Harvard limits the intake of Asian Americans to 19%. And if it was not, if they didn't apply this personality based and other criteria, it could be as high as 50%. And last week in Massachusetts, the basic the this the school board tried to really find ways to eliminate merit, and it just so happened that they had a hot mic, and three of the school board members who were planning this, uh, while they were while they were passing this legislation, they had a hot mic, and their anti-Asian racial sentiments were actually exposed to the public, and the judge had to put a hold on the implementation of this racially driven policy. So, while it is true that in America, even though the violent incidents against Asians are rising and Indians are rising and have taken place in last quite a few have taken place in last few years. It is not to the extent of targeted killing of 200 Hindus, but if you look at the warning signs based on the economic envy, whether it's in academics or whether it's whether it is uh, in corporate America, introduction of caste as a protected class narrative that is going on, all of these are meant in some way or the other to bring the Hindus and Indians down because they, because of the economic envy.
I agree with you, Ajay bhai. I think warning signs are emerging in the US, and this is something that we have to take very, very seriously. And if we do not do that, I think we will be. I mean, we will be going looking back 50 years down the road and wondering why we failed to look at these things. So I think that's the lesson to be drawn from what's happening in South Africa.
Absolutely. Let's hope that the things in South Africa, return back to normal, and I think Hindus have a 5 generation history, if not more. There, it is a land where Mahatma Gandhi started his Satyagraha movement, and hopefully the census will prevail over there. The Africans, the ethnic Indians, ethnic Africans, they have a history of a joint struggle, and I think hopefully this is just an aberration, and the future will be as it was in past, where all the communities, in Nelson Mandela's vision, working together towards better South Africa. All right. So that with that, we had some very nice slides and pictures that we did not show, but I think we will move on to the next topic. Here is the destruction, picture of destruction in South Africa. If anyone wanted to see, they can refer to it on the in the news. So that this is the next item that I want to talk about, and I hope let me see if I can share my screen with you. Um, so that the if you remember, so that in 2015, on the order of the then Pakistani government, that time Prime Minister was Nawaz Sharif, they rebuilt a temple in Pakistan, which is a very, very rare occasion, but they rebuilt a temple um, called the Krishna Dwara Temple in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Now, this rattled the majority community over there, the Islamists over there. And as soon as the construction was of the building was over last year, you can see this picture in the slide where a mob came, and the mob, burnt down the temple, and hundreds of people basically just went to the mandir and just set it to fire and burnt down the entire mandir. Now, Imran Khan, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, never tired of showing to the world how India is a fanatical country and oppressor of minorities and all of that. Even, uh, but in reality, it's exactly the opposite. Uh, excuse me. And he to and to to propagate his narrative, he declared that the temple will be rebuilt and all the accused will be prosecuted. Now, this was in November of 2020. 7 months go by, and all the cases against the 350 people who were accused of burning the temple down, as you can see in this picture, Utsada, the court cases were withdrawn because they say, and remember now, this is the province where the government, the provincial government is the PTI government. So it's Imran Khan's own government. And their excuse is that the Hindus have said in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa that they will, they have amicably reached the solution, and they have pardoned the Muslims who brought down the mandir. So, if you're a Hindu, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, you have a 1 or 2% presence, knowing that even where Hindus are 10% of the population, in places like Sindh, they're not safe. And the Hindu girls are being kidnapped, 3 a day, forcibly converted and married off. What do you think a minority Hindu in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa are going to do? You think they are going to stand there and fight and going to say that, hey, no, we want the government to continue with this case? Their life is in danger. Of course, they are going to, of course, they are going to not go ahead with the, prosecution of this case, right? Your thoughts?
Ajay bhai, I think there is a lesson to be learned from this. The lesson is that if you don't speak for your people, for your community, for your religion, nobody else will speak for you. Sorry, my daughter is crying behind here. So what happened that the global woke community is not interested in the talking about this time. I mean, if you look at the media, everybody was going. I'm sorry, Ajay, you have to continue. I have to take care of something here. Ajay, you have to carry on for a minute. I have to take care of something here.
All right, sure, Sudha. So I think I think this really shows that we have several comments. So I'm going to people have joined, people have posted comments. So before I go forward, I'll just display some of the comments here. And thank you, Mudita ji, and everyone else. Jai Shiven, but thank you very much for joining. And again, uh, somebody has said that y'all hate us that much. No, we don't hate anyone. And I think to say that a mandir that is being burned and the perpetrators are uh, not being punished is not a sign of hate.
No, so the question is that India, with the Supreme Court of India, reclaimed back a temple that was destroyed 400 years ago. and decided to give a verdict in support of rebuilding a temple there. And everybody in the world went on an outrage because Hindus dared to reclaim back their historical site. And there is complete silence on what we are discussing here about temple after temple being destroyed in Pakistan, and nobody. You can understand the Pakistani government is an Islamist government. They are going to do what their ideological belief is, and that is they will not allow anything that is non-Muslim to exist in equal rights. That is understandable. That has to be talked about. That's the part that is not understandable. Why is this news item not being discussed in the US Congress? Why is there no press release from USCIRF on this topic? Why are the left wokes around the world who will, it's not like they lack a podium to speak from. They are all over the world. They talking every, the entire sound bites around the world are controlled by these people. Why is this not being discussed in them? Why is this not an outrage? That is the point. The reason we are discussing is this too, because we want to highlight that kind of double standard, that kind of bias, and that kind of almost step brotherly treatment that Hindus receive and will always receive, because we are not that we are not the chosen ones in terms of
No,
ideology.
I think let's go back to this statement that was made by one of our viewers, Mansa Musa, and that say, "Why y'all hate us that much?" No, we don't. We don't hate anyone. Hindu Dharma does not teach us to hate anyone. But Mansa or Musa, whichever name you go by, let me show this slide to you, which is our next slide, and see what you think about this one. This is the if you look at this slide, and I'm going to show it up on the screen now, and I'm going to make it bigger so everyone can read this. uh, Hindus, a US lawmaker, Brad Sherman, is saying that Hindus and Christians are being forcibly converted in Pakistan, in Sindh. Okay, this is not us saying that. Look, hate conversion is a sign of hate. If you did not if you did not hate someone and you respected that person, what is the need to convert that person? If the person came to you and said, I want to adopt a particular faith for whatever reason, that is understandable. But if someone were to come and say that, hey, I'm going to forcibly abduct a girl and I'm going to convert that girl and forcibly marry to someone three times her age, that is hate. That is real hate. Okay, that is real hate. So I hope that we definitively answered Musa's question as to do we have hate? No, we don't have hate. We respect all traditions. We do not go out and we do not go and convert other people. Okay.
No, no, no. So I want to add something further. I think calling out those who hate Hindus on the basis of a religious ideology is not hate. If you're not going to call out hate, in this case, the destruction of the temple in Peshawar, the forcible conversion of Hindus in Sindh every day, and it's primarily in Sindh because that's the only place where Hindus are left. If there were Hindus left in Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, they would be doing the exact same thing in those places as well. That is just highlighting this fact. If you take offense to the fact that we are just highlighting the atrocities that are being committed, that actually shows how much hate these people have against us. It's not just that they don't want to us to exist literally, it's also that if we talk about our existence, it offends them. That is the level of, this is exactly what we needed to highlight.
Absolutely, Utsada. Utsada, moving on to the next topic, and this is there was a Reuters photojournalist. His name was Danish Siddiqui, and uh, last week, this past week, Danish Siddiqui was covering the war between Afghan Taliban, who are sponsored and supported by Pakistan, and the Afghan government. And he was embedded with the Afghan special forces. And when the Taliban attacked, Danish Siddiqui was killed. Now, there is a history to this, right? Danish Siddiqui is not is was a very well known photojournalist. He had taken a lot of pictures, and uh, the pictures that he had taken ranged from the riots in Delhi to several pictures in Kashmir. He had given TED talks, so he was a very well known Pulitzer Prize winning photojournalist. Usama, tell us, why are we talking about Danish Siddiqui? Usama, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So the reason we are talking about Danish Siddiqui is because, you know, he was one of those people who was really, really feted. He was given a Pulitzer Prize. His voice was amplified a million times over for when he was reporting in India, and he was highlighting, he was taking pictures of things that was not good for people. You know, people in India whose family members had died due to COVID. Danish was hiring drones and taking pictures of cremations and sharing it around on all over the internet. But he goes to Pakistan, he goes to Afghanistan and tries to cover the conflict between the Afghan military and the Islamist group Taliban that is sponsored and supported by Pakistan. That's a conversation we'll have later at some point in our show as well. All he was doing was reporting on that, and the Taliban killed him. And the Taliban killed him because he dared to report on the war that was happening in Afghanistan. So when Danish was criticized, Dani was targeting Hindus and victims of COVID who were Hindus and taking pictures of their dead family members. The Hindus criticized him. The Hindus felt violated, and therefore they criticized him. And that was considered as abusive towards Danish. And the Taliban instead just kills him. And there is nobody out there right now who is blaming the Taliban for Danish's death. People were, the so-called left and the woke media were so upset when Hindus were just complaining about what Danish was doing in India. Nobody even touched him in India. But the moment he tries to do a little photojournalism in Afghanistan against Taliban, they kill him. And still there is nobody who is actually mentioning Taliban as the organization, the Islamist group that is responsible for killing Danish. They're all saying Danish died some people even said Danish died by a bullet. so that is the double standard we wanted to highlight. I mean, the work of a journalist and a photojournalist especially is very tough. So we are not going to say that, Danish was wrong when he was doing this. He had the freedom of speech. He was doing what he felt was his job. We are going to criticize Danish for the way he projected Hindus, the way he depicted Hindus and targeted Hindus often through his photojournalism. That criticism is fair, because like he has the freedom to do what he was doing as a journalist, we have the freedom to communicate our displeasure over it. But it is also important to highlight that it was the Taliban that did kill him. And that is important because if we do not talk about why Danish was killed and who killed him, we will never be able to address the reason behind many other issues that are prevalent globally, including terrorism. Your take on it, Ajay bhai.
As I bring myself into focus, so that I would say there are a few things, right? I think, Danish Siddiqui really was shameless in many ways in sharing the pictures of people who died in COVID-19. I mean, all the pictures, the of burning, chittas or funeral
Pictures
pyres,
of dead people without their permission.
pictures of
Without their
dead
permission.
bodies, pictures of dead bodies everywhere, and no respect for people who had died. Absolutely no respect for people who died. He was also, in many ways, promoting an anti-Indian narrative in every forum. And whether it was related to Kashmir, or whether it's related to Kumbh Mela, or whether it related to any event, Delhi riots, you name it. In every case, Danish Siddiqui was out there promoting an anti-Hindu narrative. It was very sophisticated. It was always presented as, and his in his own words, he was just being a mirror to the society. But he only captured parts, and he only mirrored things that fit his ideological narrative. Okay, so that this picture came out, and let me share this picture. And again, this is an illustration and to make a particular point, and so there's no harm in sharing this picture, because we are just trying to make a point. And so that if you can see this picture, uh, tell me. So this is a picture from a screenshot from Twitter, and it is from a verified account of a journalist, Stuti. And Stuti posts saying, "Please do not circulate this picture. I can't confirm if this is actually his, but sharing the photo of a deceased person's body can be triggering for many in its disrespect for the dead." So that I'm not going to dignify this by showing all the pictures that Danish Siddiqui took of dead bodies and posted it. Nobody. So that nobody called him out on that. In fact, the woke crowd in India and around the world was admiring the kind of pictures that Danish Siddiqui was posting. And I certainly feel bad showing this picture, but I had to show this picture to make a point that, look, this is the pictures that were posted by Danish Siddiqui. Not one, but dozens of them were equally, if not more, offensive. Okay, so Stuti, go back and look at the kind of pictures that were posted by and Sanjay Kaul. Take a look at the pictures that were posted by Danish Siddiqui, and money that he made out of posting that picture. He made all the money he made out of posting the dead bodies. And this is in some ways a reflection of the kind of journalism that he created. Sada,
See,
your
Ajay
take?
bhai, I think as a journalist, he had the freedom to do what he did. That is understandable. But as observers and as viewers, we should have the freedom to criticize that. What bothers me is not the fact that he did what he did and got money and Pulitzer Prize doing that. That's fine. I mean, that's how the journalistic world evaluates itself. Fair enough. But when we criticized him, we were being called intolerant, we were being called fascist, you name it. I mean, journalism is dead in India, the Hindutva people are criticizing free speech, so on and so forth. And lo behold, how did Danish Siddiqui die? He dies at the hands of the Islamists, at the hands of the Taliban, at the hands of Pakistan sponsored jihadis. And and there is very few people out there that is calling it out that way. And that is the part.
Yeah.
Again, our role here is to highlight the double standards, the discrepancy in the worldviews that are projected out there. And if people believe that what we are doing, we are trying to just call out the BS, for lack of better phrase. And it is important for people to understand that, if you agree with us. And we need to do more of this, so that there is balance in how the world looks at itself, and that's what we are trying to do.
Yeah. Also, there's a it's ironic that on one hand, Danish Siddiqui was out promoting the Taliban and Pakistan narrative around the world, and they ended up killing him.
I
Which
won't I won't
we obviously we have the sympathy.
I won't say I won't say he was promoting the Taliban narrative. I don't have evidence of that. I would certainly say that by running the agenda that he was running against Hindus in India, he was certainly promoting the Pakistani narrative. and that we have enough evidence to show for. Edward.
So I tell you something about the evidence. I mean, if something sounds, quakes like a duck and walks like a duck, there's a pretty good possibility that there's some duck DNA in there somewhere.
I agree.
I'll leave it at
I
that. Our sympathies to Danish Siddiqui's family. We only talk about the politics of around his death, and at a personal level, when somebody has gone through a loss, especially as a family, we share the we can we share the community that has expressed condolences over his death. Again, our goal was to highlight some of the hypocrisy around it, around his reporting and around his death, and not to take away from the fact that uh, you know there is a human being and there is a family member, uh, and a friend and a relative and a sibling that someone has lost. So we absolutely we don't, as Hindus, we don't take away that human aspect when we are doing politics, right?
Absolutely, and we are just observers here. We are commenting on how the world moves around us and events happening around us. Personally, I never met Danish Siddiqui, so and personally, I'm pretty sure his family is grieving at this time, and we are with them in this grief.
Absolutely. Hey, Utsada, I want to know why you picked this picture and explain this picture to me. What is this picture? Let me make this a little bigger so people can actually see it. So, what is this picture? Where is it from? And what are you trying to? What point did you try to make here?
So, Ajay, I think the I don't know how to show this picture big. Maybe, yeah, this is probably the best way to
Yeah,
do it. Uh,
yeah. No, this is fine. I think on a real screen it looks pretty okay. Go ahead.
so I came across this tweet by this handle called Kashmir Archives, and I found that tweet very interesting because Kashmir Archives apparently took these pictures of Nikhil Mandalaparthi, who is the guy with the long hair, curly hair, facing the camera. The photograph is a little dark, and this gentleman Nikhil Mandalaparthi works for this organization called Hindus for Human Rights. And over the last couple of years, this organization, I will say Hindus in quotes here, has been targeting different Hindu groups across the US and calling them fascists, Hindutva, and Hindutva is, really targeting them and pushing a narrative primarily promoted by Council for American Islamic Relations and Indian American Muslim Council, a very Hindu-phobic narrative. They target India and Jammu and Kashmir. They target Hindus in America for other things, including any assertion of Hindu identity. They will target them. Even members of Congress like Tulsi Gabbard and aspirants of Congress like the one from Houston, Shri Kulkarni. It doesn't matter which political party they belong to. They would target every Hindu out there. And people have always suspected for a long period of time that they are working as a front of you know Muslim Brotherhood linked organizations like CARE and ISNA, and of course IAMC, which is now getting funding from CARE. They were suspected of being a front organization so that they can project a Hindu name of radical Islamist groups in US. And lo and behold, at the International Religious Freedom Conference in Washington D.C. that was held about 4 days ago, it ended about 3 days ago. Last week, it was there the entire week. Somebody took a picture of these Hindus for Human Rights guys, Nikhil Mandalaparthi, sitting at the same table that was primarily a table that booked tentatively by Council for American Islamic Relations, and people surrounding him were members of Indian American Muslim Council, professionally hired lobbyists, and Council for American Islamic Relations. So this goes to say further. It proves that Hindus for Human Rights is actually just a front. It's primarily designed to target Hindus using a Hindu name, even though it's working actually for Islamists. And
We can't really say that they are a front of someone. We don't have, but it certainly appears that they have very close ties. To say that we are their front, we don't know enough to say that. So I would hesitate to say that, but I can certainly say that they are best of
as
friends,
you said, Ajay bhai, if
and
it
as best of friends.
you just said 5 minutes ago, Ajay bhai, if
No,
it,
I understand.
yeah,
I'm separating the legal part out from the non-legal part here. As part of our fiduciary responsibility, I would say that we don't really know if they're a front or not. I don't really know if CARE is funded by Hamas or not today. They might have been in past. I don't know all of that, but I can certainly say that the positions that have been taken by CARE and Hindus for Human Rights are always and Indian American Muslim Council are always consistent. I can always say that there are letters that have been signed, the anti-Hindu letters and that have been signed against the CAA or against or in favor of caste as a protected class or attacking BAPS, Swaminarayan Mandir. All of these have one thing in common, and that is Hindus for Human Rights and IMAC and CARE have signed the letters together. So
not just sign the
I
letters
can
together,
certainly
they
say that
also,
they're best of friends.
they also share.
Just to
Yeah,
finish up, they're best of friends. They have common ground, that is to be against Hindus in America. They have a common purpose, that is to bring down the Hindu achievers, and they like the same kind of food. So there you go.
they don't just like the same kind of food. They like to sit in the same on the same table.
And then they like to sit together and plot against Hindus. How about that? But I still can't say they're a front or not because we don't know. But they certainly like to plot against Hindus together, and maybe like the same movies, maybe they like the same songs. Who knows? But enough said about that, right?
Yeah, enough said about that.
So that let's move on to the next one, and this is so now we are in our usual segments, and the first of these segments. So for people who are just joining us, we do three regular segments in a week. And the first one is the Hindu Good News of the Week. The second one is the Hindu Seva or Charity Act of the Week. And the third one is Hindu Phobe of the Week. So the first one is the Hindu Good News of the Week. And you have picked a really good news. Tell us about it. I am going to share my screen and I'm going to let you speak about this. So go ahead, and as this comes up, uh, tell us about the Hindu Good News of the Week.
So Ajay bhai, over the last couple of months, there was a huge outrage when a student from at Oxford University, Rashmi Samant, was bullied personally and publicly on social media for expressing her Hindu identity, for just expressing herself as a strong Hindu. And a very left-leaning, quote unquote, woke professor at Oxford, Professor Abhijit Sarkar, shamed her publicly, and literally, they literally hunted her out of Oxford University, and she left the campus. She went back to her home in India. She was bullied, uh, and then she filed a complaint about this bullying, about the Hinduphobia that she faced at the university. And over the last couple of months, there was a process that happened in the university. And the good news is that this Professor Abhijit Sarkar was found guilty of hate mongering and targeting of Rashmi Samant. And I think this is important, and I insisted on sharing this news. And I need to credit a lot of people out there in America and around the world for making this a successful counter effort, because for too long and for too many people, Hindu phobia has been ignored. And Hindus in campuses, young Hindus who are bullied all the time for their Hindu identity, will see this news item as a ray of hope. Because, you know, Hindus have been targeted so aggressively that many times Hindus often even give up, and they don't want to talk about the prejudice they face. It's so institutionalized. Like, uh, and it is continuous. It is continuous, and more as communities in Europe, in America, are becoming more and more diverse, and people from other parts of the world bring their prejudices to these countries. Hindus face an uphill task in being Hindus. And uh, and I think this news item of Rashmi Samant getting justice for the hate she faced as a Hindu in Oxford University is a ray of hope for Hindus around the world, and in campuses, especially in campuses. And I think, you know, Hindus in New Jersey, in Rutgers, should take a lesson from this, and we all are inspired. And a lot of credit to a lot of activists in America. Sahana Singh, I should name her. She was a key player in inspiring these counter efforts. A lot of names I don't know, and a lot of names I know, but it's a long list. So credit to all of them, and especially credit to Rashmi Samant for standing up for the entire community as a student.
Those some cheer. So that the next regularly scheduled, our regular segment is the Hindu Seva Charity Act of the Week. And Utsada, we've been doing this now for more than 2 months, and I'll do this again. Let me start by playing this, and hopefully you can hear this. Let me know if you can't. Can you hear it?
I don't hear it, Ajay bhai.
Ah, okay. Let me. Also, while I bring up the music, I may have to share it with sound. But while I bring this up, I just want to mention one thing, and that is India has been the number of COVID-19 cases, second wave in India has been coming down, and that we are really, that is the good news here. Um, I think the last I checked earlier today, the number of COVID cases in India are now down to about 40,000 a day, 43,000 a day, which is much less than hundreds of thousands that were happening just a few weeks ago or a couple of months ago. The number of people dying in India of COVID, while still, every death counts, is still high, but it's not as high as it was at the peak. It is now at around 400 and 440 people dying per day out of a population of almost 1.4 billion, 1,400,000,000. There are about 450, 430 deaths in a day. So the numbers have come down significantly. But India is also getting ready for the third wave, which they expect. At least the scientific predictions are that the third wave may be coming sometime in August or September. So a lot of the Seva organizations in America, a lot of Seva organizations in Bharat are getting ready to proactively counter this third wave by having the healthcare system in strengthened with more hospital beds and more oxygen concentrators, and the logistics of treating the patients all worked out. And we at World Hindu Council of America, or VHPA, are doing our part, and uh, the we are sending the funds that we raise here for COVID-19 relief efforts in India. So please go to vhp-america.org. That's vhp-america.org, and make a contribution. And we will send that contribution to India, to our partner organizations, for COVID support. Okay, Utsada, please, I urge everyone to help to help strengthen the healthcare system in India through Seva by going to bhp-america.org. And with that, Utsada, the final segment of our show, which is the Hindu phobe of the week. And what better way to get started on Hindu phobe of the week than by having our favorite Drum roll, right? So let's start with, where is my drum roll file? Here we go. Usara, tell us the Hindu phobe of the
Ajay
week.
bhai, that was a long drum roll. It almost sounded like
You're,
marching, Napoleon's marching band, just beginning the war declaration before they start shelling their enemies.
I had to do that so that, because this is like, this is the highlight of our day. We spend a lot of time picking a right one, and we have it now. So here we go. Hindu phobe of the week: trolling of NASA intern for her Hindu faith.
Yes.
And Usada, I before you will, I know that you have a lot to say about the person who posted this tweet, but I'll just say this to introduce the subject, and I'll share the screen so that people understand why we have picked this particular Hindu phobe. Okay, so that I this is the person, and I'll put our pictures at the side so people can see this, and I will share the screen. All right, Usada. So this intern, a college student, okay, and so she doesn't. No, this she's obviously working from home because of COVID. She's an intern at NASA. Remember, intern. Okay, this is. I have had so many interns that I can tell you that these are people who are high school students or college students. They're very eager to learn something new. This particular intern is sitting at home learning along with three other interns, and NASA puts out a tweet of a Zoom session that NASA is doing with these
I,
interns, puts it up on Twitter, and says, "Hey, look, we had some great interns this year, and please apply for internship program for next year." That's all the tweet said. Okay, there was nothing other than that. Please go to intern.nasa.gov, just like we are hiring interns for Hindu Pact, right? And we are saying, hey, please go to our website, click at, go to the career posting and apply. NASA made it a little bit fancier. They put pictures of current interns and said, "Hi, can you, look, these are great interns that we have, apply for next year." And there's a deadline. That's all, right? And the only thing that I see here is a work environment. Now, it so happens that there's this Indian girl, a Hindu girl, whose workplace has a murti of Saraswati Devi, which is a goddess of learning, and who is a murti, a Ganpati murti, because we start all the studies and everything with Ganpati Stuti, Ganpati Vandana. And all of a sudden, she's a target of a very well known, world renowned professor. Tell us, take it from here.
so the lesser said about Ashok Swine, the better.
So, who is Ashok Swine? So, first of all, Ashok Swine is the one who brought this to notice to everyone, right? Because it was just a tweet from
Yeah.
NASA. And what did Ashok Swine do? Start from there, and who is Ashok Swine?
So let me start from who is Ashok Swine. That will give you a context of why he did what he did. So Ashok Swine, started off as a left-leaning Indian origin professor in Uppsala University in Sweden, and he's one of those guys. There are people like that. He's not different from Abhijit Sarkar of the Oxford conversation. They ridicule Hindus, they target Hindu students, they target Hindus in politics. Any expression of Hindu identity, they would target it. And Ashok Swine, he would try to nuance it by saying, "I'm also a Hindu. I have a Hindu sounding name." The usual bells and whistles that many of these Hindu phobes do. And since he's of Indian origin, he's taken seriously because it's like one of your own people is bad mouthing you. So there are people out there who will promote him as the insider critic, and that went around for a while in the global context. What is unique about Ashok Swine is that he transcended from just mere Hinduphobia and criticism as an insider of Hindus and India to actually promoting foreign, non-Indian, anti-Indian narratives at a geopolitical level. So Ashok Swine would, from going just being critical of Hindu practices, he would go from that to targeting Hindus and India during the Balakot strikes that were done on Pakistan. He would carry forward the Pakistani line. He would carry forward the Pakistani ISI in their intelligence networks narrative on Jammu and Kashmir. So for more than one occasion, he was promoting, and he continues to do so quite regularly, not only being anti-Hindu or Hinduphobic, but he also promotes, and regularly, almost on a cue, promotes narratives that countries that are not that are against India, and their narratives of their intelligence agencies, he would promote that. It could be just a coincidence. But in the past, we have known people like that. Angana Chatterjee, who was found to be receiving money from ISI, Ghulam Nabi Fai, in America. So she's probably, he's probably in the same vein. His narrative is the same vein as Angana Chatterjee. I'm not saying that anything more than that. It's for people to judge and make a decision on how they look at Ashok Swain. And not just that, he pursues the narrative even on global Islamist issues, like C.J. Werleman, who is a who is a promoter of Muslim Brotherhood. C.J. Werleman is an Australian journalist who lives in America, supports Al Qaeda in Syria. So Ashok Swain would promote his narrative as well. So there are too many coincidences and too many overlaps here to not look at Ashok Swain with a pinch of salt. And the thing he does, it's not just Hinduphobic, it's more serious and more geopolitically inspired than that. Having said these things about Ashok Swain and his background that goes back about 10 years or so, we have to look at what he posted here in that context. So him targeting a Hindu girl, posting from intern at NASA, posting a picture of her workspace with with deities behind her, Hindu deities behind her, nothing offensive. I mean, the only people who will be offended by Hindu deities would be fanatical Taliban like people. And for Ashok,
The people who basically go and kill, people who go and basically
destroy Hindu
destroy
temples.
the
Yeah,
destroy the temples and destroy the Bamiyan Buddhist
they destroy
statue
the
and people
Bamiyan
like that.
Buddhas. And,
Those are the ones who would be really
right,
offended, right? Who else would be offended by someone at their own
right,
home,
right.
in their own workspace, putting up the
Of
murtis
their own deity.
behind on their desk, behind the camera? I mean, come on.
Right.
Or in front of the camera, rather,
I mean, this
behind
was a
themselves,
selfie
in
this
front of
girl
the camera.
took.
Why would anyone be offended?
So Ashok Swain
What is there to be
places
offended?
himself in the league of the Taliban, which is not, given who supports and props up Taliban, that's not a coincidence based on what I just said. Ashok Swain just exposed himself once more about where he stands. And it's sad. It's sad, but this is not unique to what he does. And I think people need to take him in that vein. If somebody is supporting a Taliban narrative, if somebody is promoting Pakistan's ISI's narrative on Jammu and Kashmir, not once, not twice, but consistently over the last couple of years, people can make their own calls on this.
Yeah, so that I cannot, say, much more than he's for anyone who hates the Murti this much is an iconoclast, and he acts like a Talibani because he shares the same hatred for Hindu Murtis, and he has the gall to say that I found the photo of an intern surrounded by gods and goddesses used by NASA as perpetuating the stereotype that Hindus, even if they are students of science, are extremely religious and always seeking divine blessings. So that we should do a show on this as to what were Einstein's view
Absolutely,
on
absolutely. Not just that, Ajay
religion.
bhai. I think we should also do a show on how the intelligentsia in Indian universities, as well as those like Ashok Swain, who I don't think is speaking as an Indian anymore, or on behalf of anybody in India anymore. Uh, I think we need to talk more about this trend. What I feel is good about this is that people like Ashok Swain were exposed a year and a half ago. They were exposed by the aggressiveness with which they peddled an agenda. And if you follow Ashok Swain on Twitter, he's just preaching to the choir, and his choir at this point is all followers from Pakistan. So I think that in that aspect he has he's not effective anymore. And if anybody is still sponsoring him from Pakistan, if they're listening to us, I think they're wasting their money, because the only people who listen to Ashok Swain and take him seriously are fellow Pakistanis. So they might as well stop, their patronage if they have any.
Yeah. So that, and it really bothered me. I mean that publication and a broadcast network like Vice gave a voice to people like Ashok Swine, and then they reinforced what Ashok Swine was saying, excuse me, by saying that many Twitter users, now Twitter has hundreds of millions of users. You can always find 5 users to support whatever you're saying. And many Twitter users felt that the photo glorified the stereotypes and questioned why a scientific organization like NASA was showcasing religious imagery. First of all, it is her home. Second, she is not going around propagating religion more than anyone else or less than anyone else. She is just following her own practices. And third, if you want to know about science and religion, go look what Einstein wrote about science and religion. Go look at what all the other prominent scientists have written about religion and the place religion holds in their lives while they are doing state of the art science.
Actually,
Okay,
a good
don't go after a 20-year-old intern to make your political
a
points.
good place to good
And
place
no
to
wonder
start
Ashok Swine had to delete his tweet.
a good
Good.
place to start, Ajay Bhai, is to read Oppenheimer, the chief architect of the Manhattan Project that designed and tested the first nuclear bomb. Uh,
Right.
Probably the biggest, unfortunately not the best in terms of its impact on humanity, but one of the biggest scientific efforts of the 20th century, the Manhattan Project of designing and testing the nuclear weapon. And the chief architect of that, Oppenheimer, people should read about his opinion on Hindu dharma and what he thought of Hindus. So if there is anything that is congruent with what NASA is doing, I think the image, I would put the image of Vishwakarma as well in that list. If I were to give a suggestion to my friend who is the intern at NASA, whose picture was used, I would add the picture of Vishwakarma as on that podium, on that Vedi, and that would be a perfect homage to what NASA is doing. And this is an opportunity for those who are iconoclasts around the world to learn about how Hindu Dharma and science work. To and
Absolutely.
this is not what this is. Hindu Dharma has never been at odds with science. Hindu Dharma, that is why Hindu Dharma is not a history centric, iconoclastic, uh, super exclusivist belief system. It's an evolutionary system because it works with science. And that's, we should have Ashok Swine discuss that with us someday.
Absolutely. Well, Ashok Swine was going to be very honored that we named him the Hindu phobe of the week.
Ashok Swine,
And
if
so
he
that
listens to the sound that accompanied his name.
I am sure he's going to. So I'm sure he's going to. Well, so that with that, we come to the end of today's show. And, as always, it was a lot of fun. For people who are listening to us either live or recorded, I want to let them know that this is Hindu Lounge. Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact, the policy research and advocacy initiative of World Hindu Council of America. We come live every Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Pacific on our YouTube, our Twitter, and our Facebook channels. Utsada is Utsav Chakrabarti. Is the executive director of Hindu Pact. And with Utsada, it's my privilege to be always here every week. I'm Ajay Shah. I am the president of World in the Council of America. Utsada, as always, thank you very much. And please keep the live stream on, because as with every week, we have this fantastic music created by Decibels just for this episode of Hindu Lounge. So every week, for those who are joining us, they would know. For every week, we have a special tune that is created for Hindu Lounge for just this episode of Hindu Lounge, and it's exclusive Hindu Lounge episode. Just I cannot be more thankful to Decibels for creating this week's music. Utsura, thank you again. Have a good rest of the weekend, everyone. And as we sign off, we will play. We'll turn our videos off. We will share the screen with the title slide, and we will play this fantastic music. Utsura, thank you again for doing this week in and week out. I know it's for me it's a lot of fun, and it's just my privilege to be doing this with you.
It's my pleasure, Ajay Bhai, and thank you for doing this with me. And my apologies to the viewers. My daughter is always lurking around. She's 19 months old, and she always adds background music to the show.
All right, thank you, Sada.